everybody doing?
Let me go ahead and actually give proper bio. All right. Lewaa, but give me grace on this last name. Nasserdeen.
You said it better than my parents.
Wow. Amazing. Lewaa Nasserdeen is an award-winning filmmaker whose career spans film, television, and documentaries. That's not the right word. Documentaries. He is a dynamic storyteller who received or recently signed an exclusive overall deal with Skydance Studios. Lewaa wrote and starred and executive produced Berlin, a half-hour dramedy for Jax Media, an Emmy-nominated Russian doll, as well as served as writer and producer for the third season of Marvel's Daredevil for Netflix, which is also, I love this Daredevil. Love this Daredevil. I feel like some of the fighting scenes are some of the most real that I've seen in like a Marvel franchise. Like it's just, I love it. It's
He produced an episode with a very, very long take.
Yeah, season 3 fight sequence.
In jail?
Which,
Yeah.
the jail cell one?
Yeah,
that's mine.
He produced that episode.
Yes. And absolutely. Other writing credits include hit ABC comedy series The Goldbergs, The Real O'Neills, as well as HBO's Vinyl. And on the acting side, Lewaa recently guest starred in NCIS New Orleans. Nolans. That's how you say it. I feel like every time I say New Orleans, I have to also say New Orleans, but now I'll also add Nolans.
Oh, I went there. I was like, do I have a
I love it. All right, Erman.
Yeah. So, like I said, I met him 4 or 5 years ago, and since then he's been killing it. I don't want to say he was just a staff writer, but at the time he was just a staff writer, and 4 years later he's like has an overall deal with one of the biggest production companies in the world. So just catch me up too. Like just catch us up on the last 4 years. How'd you get from staff writer to?
Well, how do we get to staff writer first?
In the first
Can
one,
we?
Yeah. How did we get to staff writer? It's interesting. I'm Canadian, so
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got some Canadians?
Minnesota. So sometimes,
Canada.
yeah, exactly. They think we are.
So it was interesting. I was talking to a few people, and a few people from out of country, so I had to immigrate here. I had to find a way to really know what my niche was. And early on, Canada actually prepared me for what the industry is looking like now. Because in Canada, there were so few opportunities. You kind of had to do everything. There wasn't the luxury of being a comedy writer or a director. There were so few jobs, and that was training that was instilled in me really, really early on. Because when I first got here in 2008, I was like, shit, I'm gonna make it. There was a writer's strike, a recession. I was like, I lost my hair. Yeah, it was like everything was gone. So, but what happened really early on is the industry was like, pick your lane and stick in it. And that just felt really wrong for me.
Yeah.
I was trying to, and this is the advice I want to give to everyone, because I'm telling you, a couple of years ago I was sitting in one of these looking and being like, oh my God. So the first thing, everybody here can make it. You're going to hear this bullshit about like look to your left and look to your right and one person's going to make it.
No.
You completely determine that. Every single time someone told me you couldn't do something, it was the thing I wanted to do. Because it's just an industry where no one actually knows what the fuck is going on. And so everyone just has to prescribe the thing that makes them feel safe. So it's not that someone's trying to take something for you or like lose your shine. It's an industry that's constantly evolving. So the only thing they think that's going to work next is what worked before. But reading the tea leaves, you were seeing Lena Dunhams, and you were seeing Lena Waithe, and you were seeing the Donald Glovers, and you were seeing people who were creating an environment where they were the yes man or woman. So when I got here, I was like, my superpower needs to be, you can't put me anywhere. And why? When the industry started to change, I was able to shift and pivot. So the first thing I got here, I had a biopic on Montgomery Clift that I wanted for years and years and years and years to make. And everyone's like, no one's gonna make a movie like that. And there was an actor that I just loved. And everyone's like, he's not big enough, he's not big enough, he's not big enough. And I'm like, that's the guy. Last year he won the Golden Globe for Bodyguard. He's now going to be
Oh,
a
wow,
Marvel
yeah.
superhero, and he's doing my movie. And the reason why that's exciting is you're going to hear so many people say like, it's not the market, it's not blah, 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 blah. And so what I wanted to do when I first got here, I knew I had Monty, that script, under my belt. So I had the drama, prestige, blah, blah, blah. What else could I do to give me the most ammunition? And I wanted to pivot immediately into what everyone said were the hardest rooms, and that was a comedy room. Why? Have you ever been out in a bar and had a joke that didn't land? And it's like the worst, you're like, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. Try being out with like 12 people who are so funny. The more funny you are, the more target you have on your back. If you're not funny, you're going. So that cutthroat environment was great. It was survival of the fittest, but it allowed me to really hone specific skill sets. So I always knew I wanted to transition out of that. And I left, I pivoted over to Real O'Neill's. It was really important for me. I'm gay, and I wanted to create, from a diverse point of view, like being Arabic and gay, I was like, where can I find a place where I can speak authentically to my voice? What can I contribute to? And diversity means all talents. I was a huge music fan, so being at the Real O'Neill's, immediately when vinyl, that opportunity showed up, I was like, yes, that's what I want to do now. Why? A pivot, because it was completely different. I mean, and you have to go there and get the job, which is interesting. Because I remember I walked into HBO and they're like, "Who the fuck? What are you doing? You're doing this show on ABC," and then you just had to go in and you had to sell yourself.
Yep.
So you just walked in, and without an appointment, without a meeting,
It was actually a really interesting story. My best friend at the time was like, "Hey, I'm going to this filmmaker's house. Can you just come with me? Can you be my date?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I walked in, and he has a $5 million home. I'd spent years eating potatoes. I was just like, "I'm gonna take some shit from here." I walked in, and I was dressed exactly like the host, and he's like 5'2". So he looked at me, and I was with the girl that he liked, not knowing, and I was just like, "This is fucked up."
But what do you mean, like you were dressed?
We had the exact same outfit on. Not like, kind of. Like, it looked like I went upstairs and took like an extra large. And I just walked in, I was like, I look like an asshole right now. But then I went upstairs and there was a couple of guitars, so I was like, oh, this is cool. And then he showed up and we started talking.
Amazing.
That guy is the director of the new movie Report that's coming out with Annette Bening. So, it's Scott Burns, he'd written Bourne Ultimatum. I mean, I think I had a visa at this point. And what happens while he was working with Soderbergh and doing everything, he had this opportunity in television because the first season, the showrunner was dismissed. So Scott was brought on board. Scott had never done television. I was working on Real O'Neill's. So he called and he's like, "Hey, I haven't worked in TV. Like, what should I do?" And he's incredibly talented. He's one of the most talented, and I stood on his shoulders. And I was like, look, don't hire the best writers, and this is good for any writers in here. I was like, don't hire the best writers, hire the Avengers. You need someone who is like your Captain America who can cheerlead. You need someone who's really fucking fast, who can just pound out drafts. You need the Hulk, you need like your heavy hitter. So I was like, you really have to set your team up like that because you're the general. And he's like, great, it'll be me, you, Max Bornstein, who are Godzilla. And I remember I was listening to like a podcast with Max on it. I was like, oh, okay. But they're like, you're gonna have to get through HBO. So I walked in and they were like, we have no idea how to say her name and we don't know who you are. And
you give them my recording
I
from
did.
now on.
I was like, she got my last name on point.
Yes.
But what was really interesting, they were like, what would you want to do with it? And I did my homework. And that was the most important thing too. And I didn't tell them, I was like, look, if I don't have this job, I have Real O'Neill's to go back to. Mm-hmm. So what I can actually do is like authentically speak. I knew that the show wasn't working, so I wasn't gonna hurt anyone's feelings. I wasn't gonna be like, the show is great. They're like, well, we're trying to reboot it for a reason. And then it became this situation. I went in, I pitched, I made them laugh, I talked about what I wanted to do, and this is the important thing. I talked about how I wanted to be of service.
Amen. Yep.
Because that's the most important thing. Your showrunner's probably going to rewrite you 100 times. But when I walked in, I said, these are the characters that are important to me. This is what I want the show to say. As a music fan, this is what I thought was missing. So it was less about me getting a job and me being more of like a screen test for what didn't work and what did work. I also took the opportunity to say how much I loved Scott, that my job was to be in service of him. And that was really important. And I think any time you can really access your point of love to something, that's what's going to sing. Because it's all subjective. It's all subjective, even your writing. So just make it you. Your job is to build the house. So when you're writing a script, someone might not like it, that's fine. But at least you know you put the door in the right place, there's a ceiling. Sometimes you read a script and you're like, what the fuck is this? Right? Because it's just not built right. Your job is to know how to build it. So you gotta study that. Once you do that, it's just someone who doesn't like the way your house looks.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So good.
How do you actively make yourself of service to, whether it's the room that you're in, the showrunner, the other writers in the room, I mean, the story, how are you actively trying to be of service?
There's a couple of ways.
Yeah.
Always be a leader, no matter where you are. When I was a staff writer, I was reading the assistants' materials. Always. If anyone needed something, let me know. Daredevil's a great example. We had a staff writer who walked in, I read a play, I'm like, she is brilliant. I walked in, I was like, you ever have a question, you come into my room, come into my office, it's closed doors. She just sold the show to Amazon, she's show running it, and I'm like,
God bless her.
so fucking proud of her.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then you sit and you talk to your boss, and you're like, what do you, I mean, Daredevil was a great example. Season 2, kind of, we had Punisher and we had Elektra, and I was such a huge fan of season 1. Like, to the point where on season 1, I went to the Writers Guild and I was sitting, like, watching the writers. And because I just loved it. I loved that action sequence. I thought the character was so unique, and if I wanted to get into a superhero space. I mean, one of my very earliest childhood memories is I had like a skateboard, and my brother's like, hey, I'll trade you this card for a skateboard. And I was like, fucking cool. And it was Daredevil versus Bullseye. It was the card. It was a 1991 form. And so what ended up happening, so I was just like enthralled with what I was watching. And I told my managers, I was like, I want Game of Thrones, or I want Daredevil, or I don't want anything. I mean, I needed something. But what I wanted them to know is you won't make money unless it's this or it's that. Right? I would take anything, don't worry. But what I ended up doing was looking at it, season 2, kind of, I think some of the criticism was it got away, or it might have been too, so they were going to bring Vincent D'Onofrio back as the Kingpin, and they were going to go back to a slow burn. I got the job, I walked in, and an example is, I went to my boss and I was like, the audiences are going to expect a big fight, like, sequence, but we have to pivot it, we have to make it different.
Yes.
Because after a while, people will just shut off. And I was like, he has to fight and he can't be wearing a mask. We have to think, as viewers, that that's not Daredevil, that's just a man who has to get out of hell.
Yeah.
Then the director came on board, he's like, I want to do it in one shot. Mm-hmm. And my showrunner was like, no, like, what? And he was really bold. But the way to service people is you have to allow them to buy into the greatest vision of the show. So when I went to my show, I was like, if this bombs, like when I flew to New York to do it, and I was like, there's no way. I was worried, because I'm producer, so I wrote it.
To do one consecutive, and I don't know if these people also, for fighting, for martial arts, for it to be like as actors and stuntmen, to be a part of one consecutive long, if one person messes up,
you're done.
Because I do martial arts, and I listen to 8711 podcasts, and 8711 did Atomic Blonde, obviously all the John Wick thing, but John Wick series and Hobbs and Shaw and everything, but they have a huge, very long fight scene with Charlize in Atomic Blonde, and I've heard them talk about how it's...
And we had one shot, and we had a scene in it, so they had to stop and have a dialogue, so if an actor flubbed a line. You have to remember too, if you're just doing one shot, it's a safety issue. Because you can only do that so much before.
It's not a feature where you can do it, it's TV real quick.
And I remember watching it and seeing like Charlie Cox plays Daredevil like bleeding, and watching the season 1, I was like, oh my god, it's like amazing. And then we got it, and Charlie walked out bleeding. He's like, did we get it? And I was like, yes! And he hugged me, and I was like,
I would have cried.
3 years ago, I was watching, And so allow yourself to just get constantly surprised. Because like that shit's gonna happen for all of you if you just do it. And like you'll get so shit on in this industry. Amazing things are coming.
Was the showrunner like, yeah, I knew it was gonna be a good idea?
No, we were all like, what the fuck? And that's what you want to do too. But what I said to the showrunner is like, this is gonna be my job.
Yep.
If this fails, it fails on us. But at least we're gonna fail spectacularly.
Absolutely.
And that's what you want to do. I mean, you're seeing it now. I mean, there's 8,000 TV shows on. 4 or 5 are doing something that are special. Right? That's what's going to cut through. So do that in your writing.
Yeah.
Do that in the way you're acting too. Like, be special. Your other, whatever makes you other, is your superpower.
What's your superpower?
That's a good question.
That is a great
In which realm? In the
You give us
I had
the
so many super. No,
That's right.
you know what it is? I love the work. I really, really am still a student and a fan of the work. I listen every day. I'm listening to a podcast.
What podcast do you listen to?
I listen to everything from script notes. I listen to any interview, the WGA interview that we have, any of the actors on actors. I mean, the wealth, a masterclass, anything. If I can take anything out of it. If I just listen to something that reminds me, is great. Even doing things like this, I'll still always do. Never, never deny yourself the opportunity to be a student. Because it's always changing. Always changing. And the role changes. I mean, I went from a staff writer to now, you know, I'm producing my own show that I'm starring in. I have other shows that I'm now running with people and for people. And so it becomes an interesting thing where you go from writing in your room to now you're responsible for a $30, $40, $50 million business. So get your business in check. I would also say a superpower is I'm pretty good when it comes to my business.
So you're not just a writer. You actually know the game itself.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you took the time to learn that.
Yeah, and also I believe in myself. I've always believed in myself. Yeah, even the Berlin, the show. I had this situation that happened to me when I flew overseas. That was a pivotal moment for me, and I came back and I wrote it, and I was like, I'm going to star in it. And they're like, no, you're not. You haven't starred in anything. And I was like, then no one gets to make it. And when you make that speech to the world, it's going to test you. I mean, I was working on Daredevil, and Shonda Rhimes was there because they would do Grey's Anatomy, and we were getting a lot of offers for me not to act in it, like a ton. Like, we love it, we want to do this, but it can't be. You haven't really proved yourself. No network's going to let it. And I was like, no, 6 figures, no. Because the thing that happened to me was so much bigger than pieces of paper.
Of course.
That I realized, like, this is what's important. But you get tested, and I remember I was at Daredevil parked, and Shonda gets out of her car, and she's walking with, like, her entourage. And I got a call, and it was Mark Gordon, the producer of Saving Private Ryan, and it was the producer of Grey's Anatomy who launched Shonda's show. And he called personally. And I'm like a kid in Canada who like knows, and he's like, I want to do this, and I want you to star in it. And I said, can you guarantee it? He said, I can't, it has to be the network. He put a number down, and I said, no. And I was like, it's done, it's dead. Went to Daredevil, pitched my episode, got a call from a company in New York. They did Search Party, they were doing Russian Doll. He flew in, he's like, I just want to meet, we could do like a sizzle reel. I was like, I'm not going to do a sizzle reel. They're going to see a gay brown guy and they're going to be like, let's give it to Zac Efron. I knew what the game was. I wasn't going to do this shit. I was like, it has to be everything. But I was like, you know what? This guy wants to come down. I'm really excited and I'll meet anybody. And I'm a real fan of his work. We were supposed to meet at Jones on 3rd. He went to the wrong Jones on 3rd.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I had to be in the room at 10. It was 9:30. Fuck, and it was my episode, so I had to be like, hey guys, we're gonna spend a lot of money on a huge fight sequence. Tony sat down, we talked for like 10 minutes, and he went, yeah, we'll do it. And I went,
Do
Do
what?
what? He said, we're going to do your pilot. If you're who you are in front of me, I'm not worried. So we'll do it. He spent $1 million making my pilot. Changed my life. So as much as you're going to do the work, what the work does, it allows magic to happen. That's why. Do the work. That's the special sorcery. Because what he did, he made this thing, I thought it was going to sell, it was a little too dark for people, and I was like, oh fuck, that didn't work out. I ended up needing a co-star on Daredevil. She's like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I wrote this thing. She's like, I would love to see it. Next day, showrunner from NCIS New Orleans emails me. Hey, I got your pilot from Amy, who's on Daredevil. We want you to be on the show. That then turned around and gave me I remember I wrote a number when I first got to LA. I want to make X amount, blah, blah, blah. I have a goal. This is my vision. The pilot ended up landing at Skydance. When it was all said and done, the deal I made was for the exact number I wrote 7 years ago. 7 years ago to that day, I made it. Now we're doing another show. And I say that to say that it can happen for the amount of amazing stuff that I saw. You're not here by accident. And you're gonna get the shit kicked out of you. And thank God it didn't show up for me when I thought it did.
Absolutely.
Start for 40 minutes. I'm here for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm here for you guys. I'm here for you. Like, that, whatever you need.
Well, and the part that I love also about, like, yes, you're up here. Yes, he's, a featured, speaker, a keynote speaker. And yes, it's kind of a leadership position compared to everyone in the crowd. But as you go through and talk about these things, you're also, like, realizing, relearning, you're also obviously a student still up here.
Oh, when I see people here excited, it's like, oh, fuck, that's what's up. Because all I have is like, oh shit, I have like studio notes I have to get to in this fucking script. I have to go negotiate. So when I see people say, yeah, this is a selfish endeavor, as much as it is of me being of service.
I mean, we just had a writer's panel, and the question on there was, how has your voice changed as a writer? In your projects throughout your work, do you feel like your voice as an actor ever like differs from like your taste and as an actor differs from what you like to write or tend to write, or like?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
Let me tell you.
Yes,
it's both. Because a lot of things, because what I realized for me, I was like, I could play the bad guy in The Mummy or maybe someone else. I mean, that's what people were going to say. So at first I was like, I wanted to create opportunities and roles for people that I hadn't seen. And not just for me, so in anything I do. I mean, I wanted to work on a show about a disabled superhero. I mean, that's what people don't realize about Daredevil too. And
of course.
To make, you know what I mean? Like that was a really important thing because because you can't write in the script. Matt sees, he's blind. So try doing that writing trick. He intuits. So for me as an actor, writing,
Siri tells him.
Yeah, exactly. Someone speaks in here. But what ended up happening for me is when you're writing, you have to kind of be like the architect of the entire world. And so I love acting in that because I know it, but there's also a lot of pleasure in like going on, like when I was on NCI, I'm like, all I have to do is just like read this, and like just like go back to my trailer, awesome. So I don't think I could do one without the other. I think my whole career will be a balance of doing the things that really mean a lot to me, and then going and being a kid and having fun and playing.
I was actually going to ask that. How many people are multi-hyphenates here? Actor, writers, writer, producer.
I do guys want to like sit so you can also see.
We like it. Yeah.
So for you, how do you balance both your endeavors as a writer producer and hey, I want to act too? Maybe there's gonna be a day where it conflicts with each other. Like,
it's a great question, and it's the thing about the business too. Like I told Skydance, I was like, you don't want to deal with me because I'm gonna want to do everything, and there's such a crossover between acting and writing. Because all writing is motivation, right? Why are you writing the scene? What's the point of the scene? What does the character want? Blah. And when you do that enough, as an actor, I was like, oh, okay, we're on page 48. When you get your sides, who's an actor here? Great. When you get your sides, look at the page number. Because when something's
It'll
on
tell you where
page
it is in the
48,
story.
you have, I was just like, okay, well, I know we're probably heading into our third act. They've probably done a fake out before. So there was a layover that felt really great. Look, for Monty, I'm going to be producing that, and I don't want to act in that. So I was like, this is going to be Richard's and Margaret's. For my new show, I was like, no, this is something that I want to do. And it's about getting buy-in from everybody. So even with the studio, I said part of the deal was that I wanted to develop things for me.
That's great.
So speaking of which, I touched on it earlier. So you got the overall deal with Skydance.
Yeah.
And maybe some don't know what that means. Do you mind clarifying what that means? But
Sure.
also, how do you earn that trust? Because an overall deal is a big deal. It's huge.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking financially, but as a career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For them to say,
multi-million-dollar.
No, and like I'm at this, like Terminator 2 was like
Yeah.
our Sound of Music. I was like, oh my God, I remember I was working and seeing like a steel skeleton look at me. And so what happens with an overall deal is essentially, mine was a little weird because usually it's if you have a show on the air, then the studio that made your show will give you an overall deal. And what it essentially says is like, hey, you can't go anywhere else, but you're gonna be working specifically for us to be a content creator. And because you can have something called a first look deal, which is you come to us first and then you leave, or overall means we have huge buy-in for you for 2 years. So essentially Skydance bought my company, Myth Machine, and I'm my company. So I positioned and transferred into being a showrunner producer for a bunch of different shows. And look everywhere for it. I mean, the second week, one of the best stories ever is, I'm gonna have to like take it from that, but I was in a Lyft, I was having like a miserable day. My Lyft, and I just signed my overall, my Lyft driver was driving around, and I noticed like there were some like Red Bulls on her seat. We ended up talking and shooting this shit. Turns out my Lyft driver has been working 80 hours a week. I don't even know if she had a place. And I was like, why do you do this? And she's like, my daughter is a boxer. I was like, oh, that's cute, but that's amazing. She got her daughter to the Olympic qualifiers out of the shelter.
wow.
And this woman was like driving, and I was just like, why the fuck am I having a bad day? We ended up striking up a conversation and we're making a TV show based on her life.
Wow.
Because of that, and that was just a lit. And that's the other thing, being of service, being able to like say, hey, this is what you inspire me. Like let's pay for your life rights, let's do the show the way you want to do it. And now she's gonna be going to the Olympics in 2020, and hopefully we're gonna get the show on the air.
Amen.
So good.
So that's another, that is a pivot too, in terms of what's your mind, because it's not about just me. And in dealing with Skydance, I mean, it is a studio. Like they got to make money too. So you have to,
absolutely.
I just make, and I was like, I make like weird shit. You don't want to like, and they're like, no, we do. And I was like, great, but you have to hold them to that too. Like, they're a business, so sometimes they want to do,
What's going to be profitable.
What's going to be profitable.
Only make what they already know is going to be profitable.
Yeah, and they've been amazing and incredible, but you have to remember that I am so invested in protecting their investment that it's important for me to tell them when they're wrong. Because I'm servicing that, right? And I was like, if you wanted to, when it comes to like certain notes, like, I know it's a little edgy, but that's what you want. That's what you want, that's why you paid. If I shave off the edges of myself, it's not what you actually paid for. And I would actually be doing you a disservice. So that's the other thing too about knowing who you are and being of service.
Is there a way to, have you had to protect your IP in order to make sure that your ideas are safe, or you're like some stories for you, like your life rights, or how are you protecting yourself in your work?
From people like stealing?
Yeah. Or I guess, we might have to chat sometime. I have a really crazy story of what I escaped in Brussels, and I was told in order to make something from it and really not have someone take your life rights, this woman, she probably doesn't want to act in it, but there are steps you want to take to protect your IP and certain ideas, and build it up. Whether it's get a what's a comic book, a graphic novel or something made to like build up an IP or something like that to get audiences already on a story and get them there before like a movie comes out.
And you're seeing a lot more of that. I mean, you see a lot of shit that's bombing right now. I mean, Charlie's Angels made $8 million this whole weekend.
Yeah, this weekend.
That's rough. That's rough. I mean, Terminator, same thing.
So how, maybe the better question is, how are you building up your IP? Or thinking of how to build up IPs to already get audiences on, the track of some of your projects?
It's such a good question, and the way that I pivot from that is make yourself the IP. What I wanted to do is to make sure that people anticipated my scripts. So I wouldn't send anything that I didn't think was like gold for me. And when I started doing that, what happens is I started just winning fans. To the point where we had the networks come to me and be like, hey, would you develop this? The other thing too is don't be precious about your ideas, because there is such thing as collective consciousness, right? And don't let that be the self-sabotaging thing. Your ideas are going to be taken, and it might not be as insidious as you think. There's only so many ideas.
Yeah.
Also, your job isn't to come up with one idea. Your job is to come up with 100.
Right.
If someone's taking one of your ideas and you have nothing else, that's more about you than it is about them.
Actually, let's jump to the audience. You guys have any questions for Lewaa? Or you just want to hear me talk?
Yes.
Hey, buddy, what's your name?
I'm Paul.
Paul, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. You just mentioned that you made yourself the IP.
Yeah.
I mean, you branded yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go about doing that and kind of saying, this is me, and this is who I am?
I always told the truth in my scripts, and I always said, what's the scariest scene I could write? So when it was about a script about my own life, I was like, what is the shit I don't want anybody to know about me? And I made that front and center. And when I did that, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna walk into a room where everyone knows my dirty laundry. What it actually did is it gave permission to the other person to speak and to talk. When you tell the truth in what you're doing, you're actually allowing someone else to tell theirs. That's the trick. Everyone's trying to be like everybody else. Don't. They have those scripts, and there's actually people who are getting paid millions of dollars to do very mediocre stuff. And that's what they want to do, right? I mean, how many times do you turn on something and you're not paying attention? You're just like having it in the background.
Background noise, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who need to service that. It's so fucking busy.
You don't have to be one of them.
You don't have to be one of them, no. People weren't casually watching Fleabag. They sat down, they watched it. People, no matter the shade that the last season got, you weren't casually watching Game of Thrones. You sat down and you watched it. It commanded your attention.
It was an event.
It was an event, yeah. And that's what you gotta do. So you gotta tell the truth. Also, who you are, because nobody wants to work with a prick. A lot of pricks work, because a lot of times they're like really good, they're just like a nightmare. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a situation where your reputation speaks volumes, right? The people who punch down, who, I'm a producer, so I get a shit on the staff writer, or I'm a showrunner and I get a shit. That all goes around. Don't. Be of service to everybody, especially in this industry. Before you had to be a staff writer, story editor, blah, 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 blah. Now you have 400 streamers. There's not enough people who know how to do the job at the top, so they're giving people opportunities. Be the person that someone's like, yeah, he doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's a really good person. And he knows when to, or she knows when to push back. The guy gave me $1 million to do the thing. I love the guy. If he's like, look, there's a body, you have to bury it. I'm like, all right, I'll see you in a couple hours. Like, he gave me 2 no's. That's it. I didn't take them. So it was against. I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. I was like, if I took these 2 notes, I would be fucking your investment. It's not the show you actually want. People get afraid 100 yards from the finish line. Your job is to make sure you hold their hand to the end.
Damn. So good.
Does that answer your question, though?
Really good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Nice being me in that.
I have a follow-up
Take
question.
that.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Your honesty is why they come to you, so that's why you have to stand your ground.
Totally.
Is there ever a time you compromise?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, but you have to remember what compromise means, right? So let's unpack the word compromise, right? I had a scene that I loved in my new show. I was like, this is my favorite scene, I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. Studio comes back, they're like, we have one thing, it's that scene. I was like, fuck, blah, 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 blah. But I was like, this is the opportunity where you have to be a pro. So I was like, great. She's like, why don't you just come in and pitch it? Great, I'm gonna come in and pitch that scene. What I did is I came in and I pitched another scene that I loved. And it totally took them off guard. And they loved it. So what I signaled in that is, was that a compromise? Yes. Was it something that I thought was better than what it was originally? Yes. But the third thing that it did is it said, I'm listening to your note and I am going to make it better. And if I can't make it better, that's where it fucks up, because that's when you're really compromising, because you're lowering your personal standard. So what I was able to do was say, hey, this is an option and this is an option, because that's my job. And if they said no to both, then that's when I go and hold the court. I won't compromise on things that have to do with being a minority. That experience. Those are ones where I push back.
My name is Benjamin.
Hey, Benjamin.
What were some of the, I guess, the creative challenges you faced from the story writing perspective, knowing how much time, the limited amount of time, or the length, the longest length of time that you've written a script, that you knew that it was finished, that you had to let it go, it was time? What were, I guess, maybe some of those challenges that you faced? And how did you know? I guess, when
That's a really great question. This is going to be something that's for everyone. Always reverse engineer the ultimate outcome and the feeling that you're going for. For me, I know it's done when the feeling I want for the script on the outset. So when I write something, I was like, why am I writing this? What does it really have to say? Why am I writing it specifically, Lewaa? And what do I want the feeling for the audience to have? When I feel I've been able to do that, and the last thing, number 5, is I want to be surprised in the writing. I want to be like reading it, being like, oh fuck, this is cool. Because a lot of times you're like, I just wrote myself into a fucking corner. I'm gonna go be a real estate agent, and I'm gonna go online and go back to college. That'll happen like 1,000 times in your career. So what happens for me, Benjamin, is when I look at the scripts, I realize, have I serviced what I initially wanted? Is it my vision? And the other thing too, get your crew, get the people around you that you think are really smart and really talented, and listen to them. Don't ask someone for notes to tell them they're wrong. It's not your job, that's an amateur. Don't. You don't have to listen to somebody. People are gonna give you some wild ass notes that you're like, you missed the mark. It's okay. Just go to and build that network. Also, find a yes man. This industry has so many people telling you no. Sometimes I have a friend in Canada who, no matter what I write, like, this is the best shit ever. Better than the last one. And I know it's not there, but I'm like, fuck yeah, you need that. Don't you? I mean, 100%, yeah.
Hey there, my name is Jonathan.
Jonathan, nice to meet you, man.
Pleasure. Also, as a person who's, I always direct behind the camera. I'm looking into writing.
Great.
How do you decide between what, like you have a good story, you want to tell it, it's personal, whatnot. How would you make it, how would you decide if you want to make it into a TV show or a feature or a short?
Great question. Ask yourself how long of a story it actually is. If it's a road trip story, it's probably a movie, because it has a beginning and has a clearly defined end, right? So if you want to explore more of the character, like the project I did that was a TV show, very easily could have been a movie. I loved the character so much that what I wanted to do was span it over a couple of seasons, so I didn't start writing the pilot until I broke out the very last episode of the series. Because I was like, this is where I wanted to go. And so when people were like, it kind of feels like a movie, I was like, I totally hear you, and this is how we're going to pivot that. Episode 2, we're going to open blah, 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 blah. The other thing is, you get to decide. It's not about them. You decide. The other thing, too, is you're going to have so many people at so many turns in your career tell you no, the best shit you can do is when you're alone and you're writing, you're the god of it. Don't worry about that. They'll tell you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's always been, a struggle deciding where could I end it, where.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be final. So many times the things that prevent us from going is we think we need the answer. Worst case scenario, you write a TV show and you're like, this could be a movie. There's also no wasted time when you're writing. No. I had a script, I was telling my boyfriend, I had a script where I put MapQuest in it. That's how long my ass has been writing. There was like, they look at MapQuest because there was no iPhones. Thank God. Put in all the hours. Write it out. Because a lot of times what happens is we put these barriers and we put these markers, and what it does is it allows us to say, well, and I'm not saying this is your experience, I'm just using it as a bigger one. If I don't know if it's this or if I don't know it's that, it's probably easier if I don't start in the first place. Right? Look for all the ways you sabotage. The best acting class you can take is therapy.
Acting class tends to also be sometimes therapy.
Totally. But when you have that one person that's just like, that's the shit you're doing, you're like, I'm gonna put that in a script real quick. So explore yourself. You're gonna try to I literally write down like, this is how I will self-sabotage. This is how I need to, we all have our own things. This is what I'm really good at. This is my marker. And then I'll put those in characters. So at this stage, are you just starting?
Yeah.
In the writing? Don't worry about any of that shit.
Okay.
Worry about the first scene.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Layla.
Hey, Layla.
I was wondering, how do you, as a writer, now that you had that overall deal, now that you have more producer chops, a lot of creative coinage going
Wait,
forward.
let's keep going.
Yeah.
Say it louder.
But when you were starting and all those things, how did you protect people of color in the script whenever you didn't have control of casting? How did you protect a minority voice, or how did you protect, a sexuality choice?
Yeah, that's a really great question.
Wow,
To
yeah.
handle casting.
I really early on in being of service, I was like, I would love to, why don't you let me do the first round of casting? I really love acting, I could be the person. So what I used to do too is because I loved acting and I only had a visa for writing, anytime a guest star couldn't make it to a table read, I would volunteer as a writer. And so I was able to work with Martha Plimpton and Vincent D'Onofrio and blah, blah, blah. So what happens is I build trust that way. There was actually a situation where there was a person of color who didn't have as much credits. And they're like, well, we can't put this person up to this actor. They're very big. You won't hear that with white people. So that's when I said, we're dropping the ball. I'm not comfortable. And I just voiced it. I said, we're being lazy. We can't find somebody in America to act. And are you kidding? Let me go. And what I said is, I actually have a network, let me go and try. If the casting director can't do it, give me a day. And if they shut you down, they shut you down. But what you did is you voiced it. And a lot of times when we talk about diversity, look, this is an industry where you can fail up. You can trip up the stairs. So a lot of times when people are in an industry where they went from being a writer to now being the CEO, because that's the transition. You have a $60 million company. A lot of times you're like, hey, let's tell a story about this perspective that you, who's running this, have no idea about, and it could be a potential minefield for you. So what I do is I always make it a value add. I said, are we going to be the people who, and I'll even say, do we want to be brave or do we want to play it safe? Because and there's no wrong answer, but if we do, let me know. Let's just put people, and you have to be the person who's going to encourage that.
Yes, sir.
Hi,
Hey.
Don.
Hey, Don.
I have a question, especially if you're very animate about about the pitching and all that. Can you tell a bit more about the process when you hone in about the pitch, like the log line? How do you know if that's the right path after because you can hear several people saying yes, no, and all that.
Absolutely.
What is the one that
The log line will always be born out of the intention of what you want to do. When a lot of times when people fuck up with the log line, it's because they actually don't know what their story actually is. People, the way our brains are built is to hear storytelling. Like, what's your favorite romantic comedy?
Romantic comedy?
Yeah.
Probably Love Actually.
Okay, so like my favorite is when Harry Met Sally. And the reason why I love that so much is I felt it was like the perfect spotlight on what it means for two people of the opposite gender to come together. So what I want to do in my next show is so I just started pitching to you by involving you. So that's what I did with my other romantic comedy. Never let them know they're being pitched to. Because you notice how you went like this, and I pitched you, and you went like this. That's what you're doing, right? So what I did purposely was lean in and just engage with you. There's no one else in the room. But when I said, what's your favorite romantic comedy? As a pitcher, Love Actually. Great, so he likes comedy, but he also likes real moments of pathos. I got that just from you telling me that right now. So he likes ensembles, he likes a little bit of pathos, he likes funny, he likes irreverent, he's not afraid of certain kinds of humor. Great, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna tailor it towards you.
So good.
Don't try to win a pitch, just try to get the experience.
Love that. Sorry guys, so I know
We good?
we want to hear him talk forever, but Lewaa does have to run, so we are gonna. I know. Sorry. I know. But please stick around. We still have 2 more Q&As. Fantastic people. So, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, also your social media. Do you mind sharing your social media?
Yeah, no, it's Lewaa Nass.
Yeah.
Lewaaanass.
Yeah.
So if you guys have questions, hit me up and I'll make sure that's.
Sorry guys, I don't want to be the bad guy, but I know his.
No, and thank you guys. Thank you guys, really. It's awesome.